And we are live. Thanks so much for tuning into the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch, joined as always by my co-host JHK, and we got producer Michael in the back. John, how's it going? How's everything going?
Good, man. Summer's finally here, and so you know how it is. Guns out, fun's out, sun's out, all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. It's still not that warm here in Vancouver, but we're getting there. I can feel like it's sunglasses weather in a little bit here. But if you haven't watched the show before, basically, John and I go through an upcoming notable fight. And then on today's edition, we're going to be talking about the José Aldo and Pedro Munoz Bantamweight fight, which, dare I say, is being a bit overlooked. I think there's so many good fights coming up, but this is a really good one. And I'm so glad they put this one together. We'll dig into this one in a little bit, but always got to do some housekeeping off the top. Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. John, I put all my picks in last week, so I think I did all right. I got the Lauren Murphy pick right on the 263 card. There's a few other, fights that I picked correctly. Did not pick the Brandon Moreno fight correctly, obviously, but hey, that's going to happen. So make sure you download that. The biggest thing, too, is that you can go toe-to-toe with John and I because we do our picks every single week. Also, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. That would be great. All right, so this fight is going to be taking place on August 7th. It's part of the UFC 265 card, which, of course, is headlined by Amanda Nunes and Julian Arosa. If you missed our breakdown of that fight, we already did it. I think it was last week or week before. I can't remember. But nonetheless, here we are with this fight. And we always start off, before we break down these fights, of how we got here, right? So if we're looking at both fighters, it's kind of a tale of two different fighters in terms of who they are, and not necessarily their fight styles, but just in terms of two fighters, who they are. So José Aldo, obviously the featherweight king. I mean, I think you can still argue he is the greatest featherweight of all time. I know people like to put Max Holloway in that spot, but because he beat Aldo twice. But you got to look, to me, I'm all about, and we've talked about this before, John, I'm all about the legacy. You know, how long was this guy featherweight champion? He was a featherweight champion for a very long time. To me, you got to look at that stuff when you're talking about one of the GOATs. But Aldo's been in the UFC for a very long time. Of course, he was the long reigning WEC featherweight champion as well. Didn't move down to bantamweight until 2019. So it's interesting that he went that long fighting at featherweight, and I always thought that maybe he'd be better at 155 because he cut a lot of weight, but he's definitely been proving me wrong here. So Aldo's one of those guys that I remember after losing to Max Holloway, losing to Volkanovski, people were like, okay, that's it, he's done. Even when he fought Conor, I remember after losing to Conor, people were like, that's the best days for Aldo are behind him, but this guy is turning back the clock. I think we forget that he still is only 34 years old, which is not that old. In fight years, obviously, probably a little bit older. It's just in terms of the experience here, but you've got a guy in Aldo who I think has been proving doubters wrong. And on that same note, that sort of goes for his opponent as well, Pedro Munoz. Not the flashiest name, but does have a lot of notable wins, including a knockout win over Cody Garbrandt. He's got overall just a good set of wins in the octagon, including one over Rob Font. And you look at his losses, nothing but top-notch competition. So I wanted to sort of set that up because I feel like this is a cool matchup between two fighters that have really been sort of going against the grain in terms of what people have sort of expected out of them. So just your thoughts on the matchup being made itself, John.
When this fight was announced, it flew under the radar. It flew over my head because I didn't even remember when it was announced. Do you remember when this fight was announced? Because I don't remember it.
I do. I did a video on it. I'd have to go look on my channel exactly when it was announced. But actually, I'll do a quick search.
Was it like a month ago? Has it been some time?
I did a video on May 20th. So that's when it was announced as well. So it was, I think at that stage it was still, sort of being figured out, but obviously official now for this card. But what a great fight. I mean, we talk about you just look at how deep bantamweight is. Look at how many fun fights we've had this year and then fights we have coming up. And this is another really notable fight here between two vets in Munoz and José Aldo. So really excited for this one.
Yeah, José Aldo, me looking back at him, the first time I remember him was back in the day. I don't even know if people that watch this remember him just reigning over the WEC. You know what I mean? Like that fight against Uriah Faber, when Uriah Faber's leg looked like a New York hot dog, you know what I mean? Just blown up, just as crazy. The performance that he's had throughout the years, man, he is the featherweight king. You know what I mean? Like, because if you argue that Max Holloway is the featherweight king, then you got to argue that Alex Volkanovski is the featherweight king because he beat Max Holloway twice, right? So like you said, James, the legacy, man, the longevity, you can't argue against it. And the performances, and he's still performing at the highest level in a different weight class. 10 pounds lower. We never expected that to happen ever. You said it. Everybody's like, oh, he cuts too much weight. It's affecting him. He fatigues too much. He needs to go to 155. There's so many great fights there. But no, Aldo said, basically, fuck everybody. We're going to go down 10 pounds and I'm going to go after that bantamweight title. And he did. He didn't, he wasn't successful, but I still feel like he still has it in him. And I still feel like he is able to get back up there. He's going to go and get better. And we see him making adjustments, man. He's great. And I see good things coming from him in the future still. He's good. And on the flip side, Pedro Munoz, the guy is just a grinder, man. A guy that kind of flew under the radar for a long, long time. He does have great wins against high competition. Like look at the win against Rob Font, man. That win, 2017.
Finished Rob Font too.
Yeah,
it wasn't just a decision. It was a finish. I think it's the first. Might have been the first time Rob's been finished in a fight. Actually, now that I think about it.
It was, man. And Rob, it's not the same Rob that we see today, though. That's the huge difference, right? So 2017, a good win back then, but it's a different Rob Font. The Cody Garbrandt win was huge, but man, it was just more of Cody Garbrandt making the mistakes, right? Than Pedro Munoz going out there and doing it. Because if you look at his record, how many other like knockouts does Pedro Munoz have? Not many, right? But he does have finishes, a lot of finishes. But he did have a knockout over Brian Caraway the fight before that. But Munoz has climbed up the ranks slowly, and he's been exciting, and I've been impressed by him, and more impressed because he has flown under the radar. But now he has this huge fight against Aldo, so we get to see, is Pedro Munoz the real deal or not?
It's going to be very interesting. Let's dig into José Aldo, the former featherweight champ as well. 34 years old. He's 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Comes to us from Nova União. Coming off that big win over Marlon Chito Vera. I think we forget as well that Aldo was on a 3-fight losing streak heading into that fight. So really big implications here. He comes up and wins big against Chito Vera in that fight. No questions asked. It was a unanimous decision. No controversy, anything like that. And you look at the losses before that, Petr Yan, who is, the current champ right now. Well, sorry, not the current champ. He lost to Aljamain Sterling. It's funny how that works just with how everyone's been talking about Aljo. But Petr Yan, who obviously was the former champ, lost in the 5th round in that fight. That was an interesting fight because I thought Aldo was doing quite well, and then the tide just turned, kind of like the Aljo fight as well, where, unfortunately, we didn't get to see it, come to fruition. But Yan is one of those guys that it seems like later in the fight he sort of turns it up, and he certainly did that in that fight. And finishing Aldo, very impressive. First time Aldo had been finished in a fight since December of 2017, which was when he fought Max Holloway for the second time. So really impressive win there for Petr Yan in that fight. The fight before that is the Marlon Moraes fight, and I want to just quickly bring up MMA decisions as I usually do. I remember watching that fight and feeling like Aldo did enough to get the win. But it's interesting now sort of looking back at what the media scorecards were. So it was about 50-50. So we had, I'm looking here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 media members scoring it from Rice, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, about even in terms of the people who scored that fight for José Aldo over Marlon Moraes. And that was his first fight at Bantamweight as well, which was interesting on top of that. But you look at the names on his resume as well. They don't compare, right? Petr Yan, Moraes, Volkanovski has a finish over Jeremy Stevens in the first round. Max Holloway twice, beat Frankie Edgar. He's beat Frankie Edgar twice, lost to McGregor, but still fought him, beat Chad Mendez, beat the Korean Zombie. Like, you look at this list here, it's insane, like, in terms of who he's fought in his career. Faber. Also, another fight that was good in the WEC was Mike Brown. Mike Brown was very good in the WEC. I think, we know of him more as a coach now, but he had a very storied career in terms of his MMA career. Had that 8-second knockout over Cub Swanson. So this is a guy that, even though he's 34, which you don't think is that old, he's still been, just in the sport and competing at a high level, which is very impressive. So your thoughts on José Aldo in terms of what he brings to the table in this fight?
What more can you say, man? The dude he's been around for so long and performing at a high level and still making adjustments throughout the years. A lot of guys you see out there, they kind of get stuck in their ways, and then eventually they just start slowly fading out, and then they start just fighting guys just for the excitement level, right? But Aldo, he's there at the top of the division in another weight class, and I've been impressed by him. I think that the last couple of fights, he's fought the best dudes in the divisions, man. Like, he's going to win, he's going to lose. It's not the same Aldo that we have from, let's say, 5 years ago, but he's still really good, and he still can beat a lot of the guys up in the division, just like Pedro Munoz, man. So I love Aldo. I love the matchup. And yeah, man, I can't wait to see what he can do.
Last thing on Aldo. He's good everywhere. He's got submissions. We don't often see him use his submission game, but he has it in his back pocket. The leg kicks are a weapon of his as well, and he's still got that knockout power. The Jeremy Stevens fight wasn't that long ago. That was back in 2018. and he beat Renato. He actually finished Renato Moicano after that as well. So, people might look at the fact they didn't finish Chito Vera. No one's finishing Chito Vera. That guy's as durable as it gets. So, no shame in not losing to him, or not finishing him. But in general, you do see Aldo does still possess that. But taking on a guy in Munhoz who, last time I checked, has not been finished. Actually, he's never been finished in his career. Now that I'm looking at it here, so it's going to be very interesting as well. But anyways, Aldo. I believe, I don't know if we have odds for this, but I know on most books, Aldo is sort of a slight favorite in this one as well. So there you go. Here on the screen, shout out to producer Michael. Jose Aldo minus 140, the comeback on Pedro Munoz plus 110. That's kind of how I see this fight as well in terms of how it lines up. But my pick may be surprising you a little bit at the end here. But so there's Jose Aldo. Let's get into Pedro Munoz, one of my favorite fighters to interview. Just such a nice guy, super positive, and really is like I said, maybe one of the more underrated bantamweights in the division right now. So Pedro Munoz, also 34 years old. It's funny when you think of the matchups, you almost think of Aldo being older because he's been in the UFC longer, but they're the exact same age. Munoz is 5'6" with a 65-inch reach. So Aldo's going to be just an inch taller and going to have a decent reach advantage, 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. So that'll be interesting to see if Aldo can utilize that as well. Munoz, of course, coming off that win over Jimmy Rivera in his last fight. That was a rematch. He ended up getting it done. The fight before that against Frankie Edgar, that's another one I got to head over to MMA Decisions right now because I know watching that fight, I was like, I do not think Frankie Edgar won this. And sure enough, they gave him the judge's decision as well. I think Munoz could have performed a little bit better in that one, but the Edgar fight, I definitely felt like he didn't win that. Yeah, and you're looking at the media scorecards here, just 4 media members scoring the fight for Frankie Edgar. The majority, and my maths, I'm not going to count out every number here, but if I had to guess, it's looking like 10 or 12 people picking Pedro Munoz in that fight as well. So that realistically could be a win for him. And if you look at it overall, let's assume that was a win, just for argument's sake here. He would have then won 6 of his last, 5 of his last 6 fights, which is the one loss there to Aljamain Sterling. I was at that Sterling fight. Sterling clearly won. It was a case of where I think after knocking out Cody Garbrandt, Munoz felt like, hey, you know what? I can strike with anyone. And it turned out to not work in his favor because Aljo had one of the best stand-up performances in his career in terms of the striking. And he looked outstanding in that one. And that was a war. You remember both guys, ended up, I think, going to the hospital after that one. Just an outstanding fight. That was on that UFC 238 card, which was headlined by Cejudo and Moraes as well. So again, you're looking at the losses here. John Dodson, split decision loss. Jimmy Rivera, split decision loss. Rafael Sunsao, decision loss. Like, this is a guy that has beat a lot of good people in between there, including Justin Scoggins, who was big at the time, Rob Font, Brett Johns. Let's not forget, Brett Johns has only a couple losses. One of them is to Pedro Munoz, finished Brian Caraway, finished Cody Garbrandt. This is a very underrated bantamweight. And if you look at the rankings right now, Aldo's ranked number 4, Munoz ranked number 8. I mean, again, I get why Edgar's ranked ahead of Munoz, but I thought he beat him. And then, obviously Marlon Moraes and Munoz trained together, but that's something interesting as well there too. The thing with Munoz that's really impressed me is that early in his career, he was known for sort of his ground game, right? Like we saw the win over Rob Font. We've seen, when he gets guys to the ground, he's very much a threat there, but the stand-up has improved so much, John. And that's something I really like, is that he's become a very well-rounded fighter. Like, just think, I mean, the fight was last year, but just think how many years ago, if you would have thought that Pedro Munoz would have a very competitive stand-up fight with Frankie Edgar, most would say probably not, but that's how good his stand-up's gotten. And credit to the training camp that he's had at American Top Team. A lot of those guys, a lot of those training partners are making themselves better, and it's very interesting. And on that note, who's someone that Pedro Munoz trains with on a regular basis and is one of his main training partners? Marlon Moraes, who I know, most people, felt like Aldo won that fight, but still, here's a guy that nearly figured out Aldo, and well, he did. He ended up getting the win in that one, so it's something to sort of keep in mind as well in terms of having a training partner that's sort of an asset like that. So this fight is, like I said, very close. The odds sort of indicate that. It's entirely possible Jose Aldo goes out there and wins the decision, but if I'm going to give my pick here, I'm going with Pedro Munoz, and I do think there is value in him as an underdog, because typically in a coin flip fight like this, if you can find ways where you could see the underdog win, I think it's worth taking a stab. And I think with Munoz, the thing that I really like is the fact that you look at his career and you look at his losses, they're split decision losses. Like I mentioned, they're fights where he's not taking, other than the Aljamain Sterling fight, he's not taking a lot of damage. You can't say the same thing for Jose Aldo. Factor in the fact that Aldo, primarily a featherweight, is now in a new weight class fighting at bantamweight. That cut's got to be a little bit harder on him, whereas Munoz has always been a bantamweight, right? That's got to be an advantage to him as well. Just the simple fact that I think, Munoz as well is a pretty durable guy. Like, I think that, and the fact that, this is unfortunately a 3-round fight, not a 5-round fight, due to the fact that this is not the main event of the card. That's going to be Amanda Nunes and Pena. I think there's a chance that Munoz could go out there and really, get off to a fast start and potentially win a decision here over Aldo, in the sense that I think he can come out, really fast. And also, Aldo, for whatever reason, has not been utilizing the leg kicks. I'm sure Munoz is training that, just to be aware of the kicks that could come his way. But I feel like Aldo's really abandoned that in a lot of his fights. And I think that, if that's the case and it's just, a pure striking battle, I think Munoz has a shot in this one. So I'm going for the upset here. I'm going with Pedro Munoz to get it done. I think there's a possibility for sure of him doing it. I know initially when this fight was announced, I was kind of leaning Aldo, but the more I think about it, the more I think that Pedro Munoz, we haven't even seen necessarily the best version of him yet. And yes, you beat Jimmy Rivera, who's maybe not the best, bantamweight in that division, but still, it was a sound performance. It was a clear-cut win. And again, you can almost count the Edgar win as well. I think this is a guy that's going to go out there and shine in arguably the biggest fight of his career. So I'm going Pedro Munoz for the upset. John, who are you going with?
When you look at Pedro Munoz's last performance, right, it was against Jimmy Rivera. He got the unanimous decision. Then you look at Jose Aldo. He got the UD over Marlon Vera. Comparing competition, the level of competition, right? You got to put Jimmy Rivera up there higher than Marlon Vera, don't you think? And you look at that and you're like, yeah, Pedro is, he came back from those 2 losses and had a great performance against Jimmy Vera. Jimmy Vera could barely walk after that, after the 3rd round. Great performance. Jose Aldo, you talk about the leg kicks, but he used a lot of leg kicks against Marlon Vera, and he was using the leg kicks against Peter Yan earlier in the fight, right? The first couple of rounds, then, he fatigued and Yan took over. So when you compare, like, if they went leg kick for leg kick, I'll take Jose Aldo all day, man. Like, look at the resume. Look at what he's done in his but the placement of the kicks, I think Pedro Munoz does so well with the placement on the calf. And but although he's been striking all his life, he knows how to defend against that. He can see that from a mile away, and I think that it's not going to be too much of a factor in this fight unless Munoz hits him early and continues to hit him over and over early. So with that said, and looking at another statistic is significant strikes absorbed. Munoz absorbs much more than Aldo does, which is a crazy statistic because Aldo's taken some beatings in the past couple of years and Munoz hasn't, but Munoz gets hit more. Maybe because he has an iron chin, maybe because he knows that he can take the shots, right? To give a shot. And that's the type of fight that he likes too. Take a shot, give a shot. And yeah, and I don't think Aldo's going to play that game. I don't think Aldo's going to go out there and try to brawl with Pedro Munoz. I think Aldo is about longevity. He's about, smart game planning. And this being a 3-round fight, I think that he's going to have a great game plan set and he's going to follow that game plan. And this fight is not going to the ground, man. This fight, there's no takedowns. I don't think that's going to happen at all. If it does, I don't really know who I would give the advantage to, but Jose Aldo, he's grappled with the best of them, man. And he submitted some high-level, strictly grapplers. So maybe you could give him the edge there, but I doubt it goes to the ground. If it's a stand-up battle, 3 rounds, these guys go shot for shot, and looking at it technically and game planning wise, I'm going to have to go with Jose Aldo in this fight, man. I think Jose Aldo, when he was fighting at featherweight, I don't believe that he had the best diet, and that's why he was struggling with the weight. And then when he went to bantamweight, you heard that he switched it up. He got a dietitian, a chef, and all of that stuff. And it looked like it's not affecting them too much, right? So in a 3-round fight, I don't think it affects him at all. He goes in there. The gas tank is not a problem. He's going to go in there and get a unanimous decision over Pedro Munoz. Maybe even a split. You know how it works sometimes.
It's going to be a close fight, kind of like the odds indicate as well. I just think with the fact, I think at some point Aldo's got to slow down a little bit. Again, you're fighting these guys. You're taking some damage. I'm going to go on the side of Pedro Munoz just not taking that much damage, and that, he is going to be a little bit fresher when he goes in there. And I think there is a possibility he could steal away a decision as well. It's a 50-50 fight, but I think in the stand-up, I honestly think it's a coin flip. I would give the power edge to Aldo, but at the same time, like, he hasn't finished anyone at bantamweight yet. So we'll see. Has that power been lost because of the extra weight? We'll see. It's kind of interesting. We'll see what happens there.
And Munoz too, there's a 5-inch reach advantage for Aldo, right?
Aldo, yeah.
which is tremendous for Aldo, right? Like, he doesn't usually have that against, especially like with some of the other fighters that he's faced. I think what's his name? Vera had a much longer reach, right? But Munoz, he has to get in there tight, man, and get in there tight and hit those short hook combinations. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. That's the problem. I don't think he's going to be able to get close to Aldo. He's going to clip Aldo because Aldo gets hit, but I don't think it's going to be to the point where Aldo's going to be, flustered or even rocked at all. But who knows, man? But I think Aldo, he's going to go in there with a great game plan. That's the thing, man. He goes in there and he follows it, and he has great coaches, a great team, and he's been with them forever. You know what I mean? Always people talk about, oh yeah, you got to go train here and train there. But Aldo, he kind of went against the grain and stayed with his team forever, and he's still successful. So let's see what he can do.
Quickly want to mention before we move on to questions, and again, we appreciate your patience here. Aljamain Sterling had a reach advantage of 71, so that's higher than Aldo. Aldo's 70. And Rob Font also had a reach advantage of 71.5. So just something to keep in mind. I do think the reach advantage will be interesting to see if Munhoz can get on the inside, but at the same time, he's prepared for opponents that are just as long. So that's one thing to sort of keep in mind there. Before we head to questions, I want to make sure to remind everyone, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and also download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I haven't put in my picks yet, but I will get them in today. It's on my list of things to do. I was good last week. I hit all the picks, but yeah, some rough picks on there as well. Olivia Alvin Mercier and PFL getting the upset win. Didn't expect that. What was the other one? Douglas Lima losing to Amasov. That was another one on Bellator I didn't get right. But overall, I think I did well. I have to double check how I did on the app, but that's something to keep in mind. If you guys are picking the fights, make sure you use the app and you can go toe-to-toe with all of us. All right, let's get to the chat here. We got Antoine Willis, who says, with Aldo sitting at number 5, do you think he beats Pedro? He can potentially fight back up to a title shot, or is he done competing for the belt? I think he'd still compete for a title. Right now, just with his name value, like if it was any other fighter, if it was like a not as notable fighter as Aldo, I would say maybe it would be a tougher road, but he's always going to be considered like a money fight for certain fighters in that division, and that will lead him to getting bigger fights and therefore, getting closer to, to opportunities. And plus, I mean, who knows what happens at the top of the division? What if Aljamain Sterling goes out there and beats Petr Yan? That's a fresh matchup that hasn't taken place yet. So there's those types of possibilities as well. Or maybe, just not looking too far ahead here, but maybe Sandhagen wins against Dillashaw and he beats Yan or something. I don't know. Like there's a lot of variety at the top of the division right now, and it'll be interesting to see what can happen there. What do you think? Do you see Aldo as Aldo as opposed to Aljo? It's confusing. They're in the same division. Do you see Aldo potentially getting a title shot again?
I think so. I think he'll get a title shot, like you said, off the name value, off the legacy. And even if he doesn't, he has so many fights that he can take in this division. The guys up there, they're foaming at the mouth to face him. Look, Corey Sandhagen hasn't fought him. Rob Font hasn't fought him. Cody Garbrandt hasn't fought him, right? These are all big names in the division that if they don't get a fight like as a title eliminator, they could still fight José Aldo, right? Like there's still, the Dominic Cruz fight floating around, right? But for the title, I think he's gonna go back. I think he's gonna be able to go back up there. Do I think he's gonna be able to win the title? It's a hard ask, man, for Aldo, but he's gonna be able to get back up there. He's gonna be one of the top guys.
Completely agree with that. Antoine also says, good morning, guys. With UFC 264 approaching, what is your pick for favorite fight of the night? I'll tell you one that just got added recently. I'm actually going to be talking to him later today. I think this Max Griffin and Carlos Condit fight is going to be awesome. Great opportunity there for Max Griffin. For Condit, he's on a nice winning streak right now. Can he sustain this? Can he get back to the old Condit? So I'm very interested for that. So that's one that sort of stands out to me. And another one that I think has potential as well is the Nico Price and Michelle Pereira fight as well. Pereira looking to build off that win over Chaos Williams. Nico Price, the no contest against Cowboy Cerrone. Can he, move past that as well? So we'll see. Those are two really good fights, though. Any that come to mind for you?
Yeah, there's the Sean Brady Kevin Lee fight. That's bonkers, right? And then I don't know, the Sean O'Malley Luis Smoka, for some reason, that's very intriguing to me, man. Like, because Luis Smoka's a guy that, it's hit and miss with his performances, and I think that he could probably go in there and pose some problems for O'Malley. So it's a different, unique style for O'Malley to face, and it's gonna be fun to watch him figure it out.
Let's keep it going as well. Not MMA, but what do you make of Wilder's demeanor before the Fury rematch? Yeah, everyone's been talking about that. I mean, has there anyone in boxing right now whose stock has dropped lower than Deontay Wilder with, the excuses from their last fight and, all the stuff you're saying, and you're just seeing even people that are the biggest Wilder fans kind of turning around and going, what the heck is going on here? Yeah, he's not doing himself any favors. Like his best thing, I think, and again, this is just a guy behind a camera here, but I think the best thing is just move on from that and focus on the task at hand. I mean, holding something against the media, holding something against, like, if you're good with the media, you're going to get paid more money because more people are going to buy your fight and be more interested in your fight. Pulling stuff like this, like the whole Marshawn Lynch thing, where, I'm just here so I don't get fined or whatever. Like that's the type of stuff that, is not going to get people to be interested in the fight. So I don't know what he's thinking here, but, and I know you get a flat rate regardless, but just think of future fights. If this does not view very well, you're not going to get paid what you're getting paid now. So I don't know what his deal is. He's got to get over it though. It's like the guy who's, jilted ex-girlfriend, so to speak.
Yeah, I haven't really been paying too close of attention to the Wilder Fury fight. I saw a couple clips online, but yeah, it is something odd because you have to think about your future, right? Is he not thinking about that? Is he thinking about just like this is the only fight that I'm gonna have and then I'm gonna retire? Possibly,
Maybe.
who knows, right? But the thing is, he has a lot of other fights that he could take after this Wilder fight. There's always the trilogy too, right? Like you got to be able to market. It takes two to tango, right? Tyson Fury is probably thinking that too. Like if I beat this guy again, would I even give him another fight? You know what I mean? Because he doesn't even want to promote the fight, and there was no excitement. The stare down, that was like the longest stare down for no reason, right? Like just odd, man. Boxing has just turned into a circus, man.
Well, it's just that, it's just had some weird stuff happen, and then we saw Teofimo Lopez is obviously off his fights. Now they're moving it to August, so yeah, some tough goes there for boxing as of late. But it's unfortunate that sort of happened.
What do you think about that fight, though? Do you think Fury's going to be able to go out there and beat him, or do you think Wilder's so focused that he's going to be able to go out there and starch him?
No, I think Fury wins. I think mentally, I think that's a big part of, performing well. And I think his head's just not in it. Like the fact that he's still going on about this, like, people mention this as well with Dominic Reyes that I heard, when he fought Jan Blachowicz, is that, he's still thinking about the Jones fight. It's like, you got to move on from that, So I think there is something to that. And I think that's definitely playing a role as well.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's go back to Antoine. He says, I know I'm asking a lot of questions. Hey, ask away. We don't have a lot of people asking questions right now. So if you want to make this the Antoine show, we're fine with that. Do you guys think that Brandon should fight Pantoja since Alexander has 2 wins over Brandon and Askarov is booked? Also, who do you have in Marlon versus Marab? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the latter part in a sec, but so is Askar? Yeah, I guess they said Askarov has a fight booked. I don't really understand that. Do they have an opponent? I know he said that he had something booked.
Alex Perez.
Oh, he's fighting Alex Perez. What?
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like, why would they book that fight? They don't want Alex.
You know what?
For the
title?
You
know what I think might be happening?
Trilogy?
No, well, maybe. But you know what else I'm worried about? Who's the X factor in that division that might be coming to that division?
Garbrandt.
Dude, they do that fight, I'm going to be so annoyed. Like, you can't give him a title shot after the way he lost his last fight. There's no way.
Oh, man.
That might be why.
Yeah, that could be, man. That could be.
That would look really bad, though, man. Like, you can't, like, and I know they've done it before. Like, Chael Sonnen got a title shot against John Jones after losing to Anderson Silva. Granted, was that the first Anderson fight or the second? I can't remember. But anyways.
That was the tough fight, though. That was after the tough season, I believe, right? So
I think so, yeah. But
Dan Henderson was supposed to fight John Jones. Dan Henderson pulls out, and Chael was going to.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there was different circumstances. You're right.
Yeah, it was different different. Yeah, completely different.
No. That I think the I could be wrong about that. Wasn't the Dan Henderson fight? Didn't that lead to Vitor Belfort getting that fight?
Was that?
I think so. Let me quickly check here before people are like, wait a second.
No, I think Chael was going to step in, and then John. No,
he was, and then they canceled. That was the first time the UFC canceled an event. So let me just look here. The Dan Henderson fight. Yes, it was Belfort. I was right. So he was supposed to fight Dan Henderson at UFC 151. They ended up canceling the event, and they put him on UFC 152. So that's where we got that instead. So that's a little bit interesting. Let's see here as well. What do we got? And then, as far as Marlon versus Marab, that's not a good fight for Marlon Moraes, I don't think. No, what do you think? I mean, what's this guy doing? Like, you need a bounce back fight. Marab is not a bounce back fight against anyone.
The thing is, like, who talked him into taking the fight against Marab? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many other guys that he could fight kind of like lower in the division. Why didn't he just take on Marlon Vera or somebody like that, right? Marlon Vera is ranked number 15. You could have took on, Cody Stamen, right? You could have took on any of those guys. Like, why did you book a fight? Marab is like the guy that you don't want to face, especially stylistically. It's not a fight that you want, right? Or does he want it, right? Does he want it? Does he see something in Marab that he could take advantage of? Most likely, I don't know. Or did they just give him an ultimatum, like, you take Marab or you're going to have to sit out for even longer? Who knows what's the backstory of that? But yeah, very odd matchmaking too. Just like the Askarov Alex Perez fight.
Yeah, I never understand why they book fights against someone where it's like you book something before the title fight's over. It's kind of like when I don't know, they booked, I think it was Derek Lewis against Volkov, I think. Or no, it wasn't Volkov. It was someone else. I forget. He fought someone else. And then, like Curtis Blades could have been an opponent. Like, I think they ended up fighting later on. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think you should wait to see how some of these title fights unfold before you start making offers, so to speak. So that's going to be in the UFC 266 card. Yeah, I mean, again, Marlon should get maybe the UFC's like, look, like you've ran your course. You've lost 2 in a row here. You better beat this Marab guy. Otherwise, it's your days of a contender are done. Maybe they're doing that as well. So that's something to keep in mind too, in terms of how they're sort of doing all the matchmaking and stuff. But yeah, I mean, Marab, I think, talk about underrated bantamweights. He's probably at the top of the list as well, right? He's so good. Such a nice guy too.
And he's a guy that probably a lot of the dudes stylistically, they just don't want to face. You know what I mean? They're not scared. People are like, he's scared. No, they're not scared. You just got to look at it as a fighter. Like styles make fights, and some styles just don't work with yours. And if you want to move up the division, move up the rankings, you might have to kind of not face that guy until you have to. And now maybe Marlon has to face him.
What else do we got as far as other things going on? UFC 266. Yeah, so that card got moved, right? It was supposed to be an earlier date, I think, and then they moved the entire card. It was my understanding. It's September 25th now. I think it was earlier or something. They were doing some shuffling there.
Yeah. That's what I heard. Because people, I was talking to somebody. I was interviewing somebody today, and they were talking about that they wanted to get on the September 5th card, and they were talking about it was Volkanovski versus Ortega, and I was like. Then I looked back at it at the date, and it was like you said, it was moved to September 25th, UFC 266, and then they kept the Till Brunson fight, that fight night, on September 5th. So very confusing, man. These switches, you know what I mean? And then they're booking fights like 4 months in advance, which is very like odd, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel for some of the fighters have to wait that long. Look at this lineup though. So far, I might as well just quickly talk about it, and then we'll get to our next question. We've got Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira in the main event. You've got, as an unconfirmed rumor, but looks like it's going to happen, Volkanovski and Ortega. You've got Andrade and Cynthia Calvillo, Marlon Moraes and Dvalishvili, Curtis Blades and Rosenstrike, and then you've got Manon Furia taking on Bueno Silva. Really awesome card so far. So I know it's not like they don't have that huge name on the card, but still very very notable card so far, which I like.
And Dan Hooker is going to get booked on that card too.
You did. I saw you did an interview with him. Good get there. So what? I didn't have a chance to watch it, but what is he sort of looking at? I know you mentioned.
Yeah, he's looking at 3 opponents. You know, I mean, he's looking at Nate Diaz, because Nate Diaz wants to return. He wants to fight somebody. He said he'll go fight Nate Diaz, or he's looking at Tony Ferguson. Or Beneil Dariush, if he's available. Any of those guys, you know what I mean? He's ready. He said he's getting in camp. Like, he's ready to fight anybody on that day, because that's when Volkanovski's going to, head over there to the States and fight, right? So the whole team's going to go together. And that's kind of like the way that City Kickboxing has to do it nowadays, right? At least 2 of the guys have to fight on the card, because they have to go through the quarantines and all of that stuff. And he shut down those, like, the whole the fight card in a pay-per-view in Auckland, because man, that's pretty much impossible the way that they do things out there. So so he's thinking September 25th, UFC 266. I would love to see him take Nate Diaz. I think that's stylistic. That's a great fight. It would be totally different from the Leon Edwards fight.
But I don't think Nate's going to fight at 55 anymore.
No, but he said he'll fight at welterweight.
He would. Interesting, because Hooker used to fight. I mean, Hooker's so big anyways. He could easily fight at welterweight.
Dude.
Like, he's a very big guy. But
he just told me that fight week he just doesn't have to cut weight. That's it. And he's
there you go. I'd like to see him at 170. He's a guy that fought at 45, which is crazy. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting there as well. Let's get to James's question. He says, after seeing your debut, how do you see the career of Clarissa Shields going? This is a tough one. I full disclosure, obviously I do host for PFL, but I think even outside of that, look, I mean, if we're taking an unbiased approach to this, she did not look good the first 2 rounds. However, it's her first pro fight. Like, this expectation of that she's just going to come in here and be amazing everywhere is just very unrealistic. I don't care who you are. It's just not, it's not going to happen. It's no different than, if Mackenzie Dern had made her pro debut against like a really good 9-fight veteran who's a striker, she would not look good on the feet. She'd probably get pieced up, and hopefully she gets it to the ground. Like, I don't know what people are expecting here, but like, and I know there's also people who don't like the fact that she calls herself the greatest women's fighter of all time, blah, 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 all this stuff. People, the problem is people are asking her about Nunes and Harrison and all this. So what's she going to say? No, I would lose badly to them. Like, you have to be realistic about this. So I think she's getting a lot of unnecessary hate. Of course, her ground game's not good. She's barely been training, 6 months, and you're expecting her to, fight someone that's literally did all grappling last year, Brittany Elkin. and who's had 9 fights. So I think the fact that she won, the fact that she didn't panic when she was on the ground, that she was able to get into situations, I think speaks very highly of what she's capable of doing. And, we had Cynthia Calvillo on my Victory Loves Company podcast yesterday with Jim West. She said the same thing. It's like the fact that she showed good fight IQ gives a lot of promise to her fight career. And again, she's 26 years old. Like, she's got lots of time to figure this thing out. It's not like she's like CM Punk and you got to really learn on the job, right? Like, I thought she looked good as long as PFL keeps booking her against fighters of that ilk, and no pun intended, Brittany Elkin. That's where I think she'll find success, and I'm excited to see what's next for her. And it's going to be a work in progress here, right? Like, but I think the biggest thing is just giving her fights that she has the ability to win. Like, if you want to look at what not to do, don't book Aaron Pico and Zach Freeman together. Like, that was just, in hindsight, just a stupid fight for him to take. Like, Zach Freeman had fought Thiago Moises, I think, like 2 fights before that. So you're going from that to fighting Aaron Pico who had no MMA experience. It's just too much of a jump. So I think there's still a lot of promise. I think her hand speed and her power is going to be a problem for a lot of the women out there as well. One other quick thing I'll mention on this, because I've heard people talking about this, because I know Jim was arguing with this with me yesterday on the show, is that, what are they going to do about her division? There's no lightweight division. Who's to say fighters don't want to move up and fight in that weight class, right? They don't have to cut the extra weight. In fact, I think, and it's something Jim and I've talked about on the show, is that why don't more 35ers move up? I mean, you're potentially 1 or 2 fights away from a title shot, as opposed to having to go through the gauntlet at 135. Like, it's the same sort of thing with 155. Like, if the UFC could do it in a division, they could bring Kayla Harrison over. They could bring Clarissa Shields over. They could get, like a Felicia Spencer to move up, a Megan Anderson to move up. You know what I mean? Like, they could get creative with it if they really wanted to, or some other promotion could do that. Maybe Bellator goes that route. Maybe fighters go to PFL and they look at the money they could be potentially making. So I think there's a lot of options there as well. But overall, I thought she looked fine. And yeah, I mean, obviously she struggled, but the fact that she got the win was the most important thing to me. What did you think?
The first thing before we get into that fight, I wanted to talk about that lightweight division. I think that PFL is doing a great job with the lightweight division. I think that division is going to grow, and there are more girls going to come in and fight, because there's a lot of girls that are at that weight around the world that they could pick up slowly and build them up, or just let them fight regionally and then, sign them when they need to. And with Clarissa Shields, man, I was more surprised that Brittany Elkins, a jiu-jitsu specialist that's been grappling multiple times throughout the year in 2020, could not submit Shields and was in the mount for long periods of time. I was just shocked at that, right? And she didn't really attempt many submissions. Remember, she did go for the arm bar, I believe, and that was just very sloppy looking, right? It's just, maybe I was overestimating Elkins' ground game, because Shields, man, she just kind of like sat there the whole time. Like, there was moments where like there was not much action when she was on top. But man, when she got back up in that 3rd round and just started that ground and pound, man, she has some nasty ground and pound, man. I wouldn't want to be hit by any of that right there,
No.
man. And Brittany Elkins felt every piece of it. So Shields, man, I think she's gonna do good, man. I think they just need to give her the fights that build her up. But being on that stage and all the attention on her and still fighting and going through all of that and winning, that builds her confidence tremendously, man. A lot of the doubt probably in her mind is gone now. Now she could just go back to the lab. What do you think she should come back? Do you think she could take the rest of the year off and train, or should they bring her back this year?
Get her one more in. Do one at the end of the year. Get her one more fight in this year. I think, from now, because what's June, you book her in November, December, something like that. And you give her another sort of opponent of that caliber, you move up a 45 or 35er and see what happens. And just, get out there, because think about it. If you're a fighter on the regional scene, you have a huge opportunity to make a name for yourself if you do end up getting the win. So there could be incentive on both ends to do it. So we'll see sort of what they decide there as well. Let's get to another question here from Antoine, I should say. What about Marab potentially fighting Aljamain as he climbs the ranks? I mean, they're teammates. That's right. That's crazy. I've talked to Marab about this several times. He's talked about the possibility of going to flyweight, which is crazy because he's a pretty stocky bantamweight, but he feels like he could make 125 if he cleaned up his diet a little bit. So that's what would happen. That's basically what he said to me. So,
man, what a loyal guy, man. In an individual,
such a nice guy, man. Like, he is just like,
guy.
Yeah, just super, super nice.
It just shows
and that's why, like, I felt bad about the whole Aljamain thing, with him, the way that whole fight unfolded, because he got a lot of hate, obviously, because he's posing with his teammate, and he is like literally the nicest guy ever. And I just was reading the comments on Instagram, just people just trashing him. It's like, come on, man, like, you got to know who you're trashing here. Mr. Overkill, do you agree that Nate would have destroyed Leon in the 6th round, just like how he would have done to Masvidal in the 4th and 5th? Well, here's the worst part, and we talked about this on the stream on Saturday, which, by the way, if you missed our reaction to UFC 263, John and I did a live stream during the entire thing. It's on my channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. I put timestamps in there so you can actually watch our reactions to each one of the fights. But no, of course not. The worst part about that fight is the fact that people are now going to think that Nate could have come back and beat Masvidal, which was never going to happen. I still maintain that Masvidal beat Nate Diaz better than Leon Edwards did. Leon definitely got the win. I'm not denying that. But if you look at what Masvidal did to Diaz's face, the damage that he took, and they're different fighters. I mean, Masvidal's more of a striker volume guy, whereas Leon was utilizing the kicks more. So, of course, Diaz's face is going to look worse against a Masvidal, so to speak. But, yeah, if it was a 6th round, I think Leon would have still won. Like, he survived. Like, that's the thing that people are forgetting. He did get wobbled, but he survived. It's no different than when Kevin Lee fought Edson Barbosa. For whatever reason, people, I guess because of maybe the magnitude out of it, but people don't like look at that fight like, oh, Kevin barely won. He got rocked. They look at it as he got rocked and Lee still dominated the rest of the fight. That's how they look at it. I don't know what, I guess we're not doing it here because it's the last thing you remember about that fight because it was in the 5th round. Maybe if Leon gets rocked in the 3rd round and you know, then comes back 4th and 5th, it would be different, but it was the 5th round. So it's fresh on people's minds. And look, I'm of the camp that he should get the title shot. I just did an article on MMA Surge talking about this, how I think that you could still satisfy both parties here. You could still give Colby the title shot and you could just get Leon to fight the winner. I know Leon's already had a long layoff, but look, like, he shouldn't have to fight a Wonder Boy or people like, and can we get off this idea too? Sorry to not to go on a rant here. This idea that he's going to fight Masvidal, it's never happening, people. Never, never, never happening. I will eat as much crow as I need to if it does end up happening, but there's no incentive for Masvidal to take that fight. Masvidal's not interested in the title. He's had 2 cracks at it, regardless of if there's a new champion. As his age, he's probably never fighting for a UFC title again. He's looking at money fights. Leon Edwards is not a money fight. And it's not a fight I think that Masvidal necessarily would feel comfortable and feeling like he could win. So why do that when you could fight Nate Diaz, who's an easier opponent, and a fight that's going to pay you more money, or there's other notable fights that he could have in that division. So those are just a few things I wanted to say. But John, I didn't even give you a word in here, so let's hear it.
Man, the 6th round, it's like the Tooth Fairy. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's like talk about the Tooth Fairy, the 6th round. Like that, there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing. And you know what I thought Nate was trying to do? I think Nate was trying to like get Leon to go for a takedown. I think that's what he was trying to do after he rocked him, and it just didn't work out that way. And Leon actually played it smart and kind of like, you know, slid to the side and kind of stayed away until he recovered. But yeah, Nate, you know, him doing that, he didn't destroy anybody. And you know what trips me out the most is that people believe Nate won that fight. Well, actually, he didn't win the fight, but he won overall from the fight. Like he grew in popularity more from losing than winning. Like it just confuses me, man. Like how does he do that? How is he manipulating everybody?
Regular MMA rules don't apply to the Diaz brothers. It's like, again, it's like people who said, and we disagreed with this, I think on the stream, was that people love that Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva fight. I hated it. I just like, I don't like I want him to actually fight Silva, and then him accusing of Silva not engaging. Like, you're talking about one of the greatest fighters of all time not engaging you. Like, come on, dude. Like, him lying down in the octagon was silly. Like, I was a huge Nick Diaz fan back in the day, and just to see what he's become, a guy who's just refuses to learn takedown defense and refuses to, you know, evolve his overall game. It's just so frustrating to watch. That's why I have no interest in him coming back. Nick, that is. But Nate
was doing the same thing in that fight. Remember, we were talking about it. He was turning his back, doing all this
dumb stuff. Like, dude, you're losing.
And then after the fight, he's talking about, you know, like he lost motivation and he got a cut. And,
right. It could never be that his opponent was better than him. It's that Diaz wasn't motivated, right?
Exactly. I mean, right. Like, to me, that's just like, and people are listening to this and they still are like, Nate is the man. Like, it just confuses me. Like, how did he manipulate everybody?
Those
He's like David Copperfield.
Those aren't, I mean, for the most part, they aren't, you know, fans that are watching, you know, PFL and Bellator. They're fans that are tuning in every time a Diaz or McGregor fights. Let's get real.
Yeah, they need to give him a show in Vegas so all his fans could just show up and just, you know, give him praise. You know, he's like a Chris Angel, man. He's a magician. Like, he tricks everybody. I don't understand it, man. It's weird. But yeah, let's move on.
And Antoine also says, what do you guys have in who do you guys have in Vicente Luque and Michael Chiesa? Big fight at 170 is going to help 265 a ton. That might be one we could actually preview just because of the interest in that fight as well. But you know, it's interesting. I do want to quickly look before we dig into this, the height and reach, because Chiesa is huge, John. I met him in person. He's bigger than me. And he fights at 170, and I definitely could not make 170, like for a fact. Maybe when I was in high school I could have, but not now. But yeah, Chiesa is 6'1" with the 75.5-inch reach. Luque, I feel, is like a bit on the smaller side. He's 5'11" with the 76-inch reach. So that's interesting. So it's actually Luque with the reach advantage, but Chiesa is a little bit bigger. Man, I don't know. Like, that's like when I first heard the fight, my initial thought was Luque, but then Chiesa's like really come into his own. Like that was a dominant win over Neil Magny in his last fight, right?
Yeah.
But then
the
Luque,
thing
man,
is, Luque, he's good everywhere and he can
he is.
finish you everywhere. Neil Magny's not that type of fighter, right?
Yeah.
Like Luque can knock you out and he could choke you out, and he can wrestle and he can grapple. He can mix it up real good. Chiesa's real good too, man, but he doesn't have the knockout power. He doesn't have the striking as Luque, right?
But he's also never been knocked out either. He's only ever been submitted. And you look at the last submission win that Luque had, it was back in 2017 when he submitted Nico Price. So oh no, sorry, he submitted Woodley, I guess. Whoops, never mind. Forgot there was a submission. I always feel like it was a knockout because I think he rocked him and then he got the submission as well. But I don't know. I just
but if I'm gonna pick a favorite, I'm gonna pick Luque.
Yeah, I think
yeah. But the thing is if Chiesa can go in there and clinch and neutralize and kind of make the fight dirty like he usually does, then Chiesa all day he could get that decision win. If it's 3-round fight, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, if it's a 3-round fight, I think Chiesa, if he can get there and lock him down, he could get the win, right? It's not gonna be the prettiest win, but he could get the win. But Luque, the guy is like on another streak, man. He looks unstoppable, and he just had a baby too. Whenever you just have a baby, come on, man. Like, you got to root for the guy.
We'll find out this weekend with Ige and Zombie, right? The new dad Dan Ige for sure. But okay, I'm gonna go with Luque as well. But
we'll break it down, man. We could change our mind.
Yeah, no, of course. We'll look into it a little bit later once that fight actually comes up. What else do we have here? We have from Andy says, would it be messed up if Dana offers Bilal rematch for Leon because he didn't get the finish? I mean, I doubt Leon's taking that fight. That makes absolutely no sense. And Bilal's another guy, and we talked about this on the stream, who I don't think capitalized on an opportunity he had. He got the win, but he wasn't that impressive. Like he won 2-1. Maya won the first. And I know Maya's the type of opponent sometimes that, doesn't make you look good because of just how well-rounded he is. But I think, had Bilal gone out there and finished him, or had Bilal had, even a moment in the fight where you felt like he was close to finishing, that never happened. So I feel like Bilal's kind of in the same spot he was even before the Leon fight. I feel like, that's where we're at. But no, I can't see the UFC giving, because I think they would have done the rematch right away if they were interested in seeing that being run back. And let's not forget, Bilal only got that fight because Chimaev was out, right? So that's why they had to insert him in there. It was sort of this was the only guy available type thing. So yeah, I don't think that'll happen. If it does, man, that's you got to feel for Leon there.
If Bilal Muhammad wants to hit that next level and hit that that edge of stardom, he should fight Chimaev next. That's what he should do. And if he could go in there and finish Chimaev, and if there's a time to fight Chimaev, it's now. Him coming off that sickness and COVID and the was that real? Is that picture real of his neck? There was a cut on his neck from the ventilator or something like that. Did you see that picture?
I didn't see it. No.
Yeah, somebody dissected one of his Instagram, and he had a cut on his neck. Maybe that was doctored. I don't know. But if he did have to get a cut on his throat to get some ventilator in there, he must have went through some life and death situation right there, right? So coming back from that, Bilal should hey, if you're gonna fight, let me fight you then. You got all the hype. Let me take some hype. He needs a guy that has hype, right? And fight him and beat him convincingly. Chimaev is that guy. We haven't heard anything from Chimaev. Where is he?
He's apparently in Vegas now. So there's a bit of interesting things happening in terms of his management. I did a whole video on this and got a ton of hate for it because obviously there's people sort of, on each side. But I got word that he might not be with Dominance anymore in Ali. And I did some digging. And if you look on his Instagram, these are all true things. I'm not saying it's 100%. And I have to be very clear about this because people think I'm saying that he's left them. I haven't said that. I'm just saying there's two interesting things that have taken place, at least over the last little bit. Number one, if you go to Chimaev's Instagram right now, he's not following Ali or Dominance on his account. It's just, and then if you look at in his bio, it says, his manager is the manager, the guy who runs All Stars Training Gym, which from what I've heard, he's had 2 managers. So maybe that was never changed, but that's still kind of interesting. But if you go on there right now, he's following, I think, 5 people, none are which are affiliated with Dominance MMA. The second thing that's the clue as well. And by the way, Ali is still following him on Instagram. I did make that mistake in the video. I had to edit that out because I, for some reason, I must have spelled his name wrong or something. But if you go on the Dominance website, Chimaev's not listed on there on the roster. And he definitely was, because if you use the Wayback Machine, you can go back to January, he was definitely listed on there. So something's up. And I mentioned it could be because of the whole Khabib and Chimaev beef that's been going on with Kadyrov. That could be it. Maybe he is still part of them, but maybe they don't want him knowing that he's part of them because of the Khabib thing. I'm not sure. So those are all possibilities. Again, I'm not saying that he's left them, but keep an eye on that as well to see if there's anything going on. Apparently he was in Vegas wearing a dominant shirt, so maybe he is still with them, but still something's up if he's off the website, right? Because that's not, something was changed there over the last couple months.
Yeah,
so
we need to get the schmo on the case. He's down there in Vegas.
Well, he has access. Well, no, if the schmo looks on the case, he's not going to get access. Like, I don't care. I've been banned since 2019, so I can make videos like that. It's not a big deal. Who would you match Paul Craig up with next? I think we talked about this on the show on Saturday. Paul Craig obviously getting that big win over Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
Krylov, I think, is the fight, right? Krylov's ranked ahead of him. Krylov is ranked. Krylov doesn't have an opponent right now. He's ranked number 9. You could do him, or you could do Volkan Ozdemir. I think those are two good possibilities as well.
It is, man. Did you see the video that Jamal Hill put up about Bobby Green?
Yes, I did. I don't know what the deal is there.
There's some beef right
something
there,
with his brother or something.
Yeah, something. I think like after his brother lost, I guess Bobby Green was laughing with his friend or something, and then his brother stepped up to him, and then like there's 3 sides to every story, right? There's this side and that side, and then the truth, right? So what we're hearing, we don't know exactly, but Jamal Hill responded to Bobby Green, and then Bobby Green responded, and then Jamal Hill responded to Bobby Green. So there's something brewing, but they can't fight each other.
No, I know.
Like they're completely different.
Well, it's like didn't Hector Lombard and Josh Barnett have a beef? It's like that was never going to happen. Like
exactly, man. But now you just have to keep 2 of these guys.
Hey, it's
away
just something
from
interesting to keep tabs on in the industry, right? Which is kind of interesting. But I'll say this: after doing enough interviews with Jamal Hill and knowing him as long as I have, he's the last guy I'd want to piss off. He scares the hell out of me, man. He's pretty intense. He's a big dude, can hit like a truck. So, and the fact this guy gets his arm dislocated, doesn't even flinch. No. Like, it's if they ever got him to do the dim mock in Bloodsport, I think he'd be fine, because he wouldn't they'd probably say he has warrior spirit like Frank Dukes did, right?
Jamal Hill, he like took like street fighting, like how people fight in the street, and kind of just somehow implemented it into his game, and then added like all the other martial arts to it. And that's what we see in Jamal Hill. This is what I see in Jamal Hill, and I love it, man. He's like a guy that he takes things personally, right? And he'll step up to you. So if you say something, if you do something, he's going to step up to you. But it was great to see the respect too. After they fought, they were cool with each other. You know what I mean? Like they moved forward. And that's something that I could respect from Jamal Hill and Paul Craig.
Antoine says, how do you think things will really go when Hamzat enters the upper echelon at 170? They're all into their mid-late 30s. Hamzat is only 26 with all that potential. We got to see him fight a ranked guy, though. That's the biggest thing for me. It's like, Mershart had been finished before, and I love Gerald, good friend of mine, but he had been finished by Ian Heinisch, I think, a couple fights before that. Yeah. His other opponent, Reese McKee, is not even in the UFC anymore. Who else did he fight in between there? I always get his name. Is it John Phillips? Who did he fight? Was it John Phillips or the other? I always get him mixed up. Or Marshman.
Yeah, Phillips.
Yeah, it's Phillips. I always get Jack Marshman, John Phillips, and Jack Hermanson all mixed up for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it was John Phillips. Like, John Phillips is not really a UFC fighter either. So, yeah, you got to give him a ranked guy. Like, I don't think he'd fight a Bilal, to be honest, because like Bilal doesn't have the type of, like with Leon, he had the high ranking. That was sort of the idea, is that he's fast tracking towards the title shot. Yeah. I think with Chimaev, now that his sort of momentum has slowed down because of the fact that he's been out with COVID, we'll see who they give him. I think they'll give him someone notable, but I don't know what that would look like. And I don't even know if it's going to be at 170. It could be at 185 next. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, I would like to reserve judgment. The same way I reserve judgment on Islam Makhachev. Everyone's like, don't you see this guy as a UFC champion? It's like, I don't, because he's beat one ranked guy. We need to see more evidence of how he performs. He very well could be, but I think right now it's too early. Same thing with Chimaev. Like, he's destroying guys, but I remember a guy by the name of Johnny Walker was destroying guys too. And then he fought Corey Anderson, and the curtain really got pulled back on that one. So yeah, I would just reserve judgment there in terms of Hamzat Chimaev. Do you want to do our underdog picks? We've got about 5 minutes left. Let's get into this here. Let's look at, I know one that stands out to me right away that I will get into here. And then we'll also talk a little bit of PFL as well, because we do have that card coming up too. So the underdog pick that I liked on this card is Julian Arosa. He's a guy that's really turned a corner. right now he's plus 125 about Sang-Woo Choi. The thing I like about Arosa is just the experience in this fight. He's fought everyone. He's had an interesting road to the UFC. He was on Ultimate Fighter. He's on Contender Series. He lost a bunch of fights and then came back. I just think he's on another level right now with the stand-up, and I think that him being at lightweight, less susceptible to getting finished. If you look at a lot of the finishes he's had, like the Devontae Smith loss and Bobby McIntyre, I don't know who that is, but you sort of get the idea here. He's losing the guys that are, at featherweight as opposed to losing, or sorry, I guess no, that Devontae Smith was a lightweight fight. But you know what I'm saying here, in that in general, I think he's a guy that is just turned a corner here, and I think he's hitting his strides at the right time. Sang-Woo Choi has been good as well. I'll never forget when he dropped Gavin Tucker in that fight and ended up losing. That was a fight I thought he had the opportunity to win, but he's got one good win against Yusuf Salal. Suman Mokhtarian, nothing against him. He's not really UFC caliber. I think there's an opportunity here to pull off an upset here. They're both about the same size, like big for the division for featherweight. Julian Arosa 6'1" with a 74.5 inch reach. Sang-Woo Choi is 6 feet tall with a 74.5 inch reach. I think they're very similar, but with how much more experience Arosa has, I think he can pull it off. So Arosa is going to be my underdog pick here.
I agree with everything you just said about Arosa, and Arosa has that killer instinct, and he has a way more experience, and he's been in much more dangerous situations and came out of them. I'm only picking Sang-Woo Choi because he's Korean, and I got to pick Korean, you know what I mean? Like every single time, like, even the Korean zombie, like I'm picking him, right? Even if I thought Dan Ige would win, like I'm picking him. But if I was going to make a bet, yes, I really don't understand how Julian Arosa is the underdog here.
Probably because he's been finished a few. Like if you look at his overall UFC record, he's lost more than whatchamacallit. He's lost more than Arosa has. Yeah, sorry, Arosa's lost more. Sorry, I'm trying to do my picks while I'm doing this at the same time, which might not be a very good strategy as well.
But the thing about Arosa, like he's in Vegas training with like the best of the best, right? Coaching is phenomenal out there. Sang-Woo Choi is training in Korea with like a boxing coach and striking coach, and he's sparring here and sparring there. Not the highest level of training, right? Mm-hmm. But he's performed well, but now he's hitting like that mid-level of the division. He hit the mid-level with Gavin Tucker, and look what happened to him. He got dominated because he couldn't grapple, right? And I feel like Arosa, he can do the same, but he has that finishing ability on the ground too. So I would pick Arosa if I was betting, but I got to go with Sang-Woo Choi because he's Korean. Now my underdog pick is going to be, man, I got two that I could give you guys. Number one is Kanako Murata. She's underdog versus Verna Jandiroba. I know Verna Jandiroba is very good. I believe she's ranked too, but I think Kanako, she's like a national wrestling champion from Japan. A lot of people don't really know much about her right now, but I feel like she's going to go in here and she's going to take out Verna and she's going to dominate her. It might not be a finish, but she's going to dominate her because her wrestling is so strong. And the other pick that I have, underdog, Casey O'Neill. She's an underdog against Lara Procopio.
Yeah, something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm taking Casey O'Neill here. I think Casey O'Neill is just she's just much more physically dominant versus Lara. I think she's going to be able to control her, and this fight's going to go to the ground. I don't think it's going to stay standing, a lot of the fight. So if it goes to the ground, I'll take Casey all day. And this is a good underdog.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. By the way, I'm just looking at PFL right now. You want to switch over to that real quick? Magomed Kurmanov is minus 1390 against Curtis Millender. I mean, I get it, but that's crazy odds. You don't see that too often. So just keep that in mind. I was looking.
Yeah, I don't think I would take Curtis Millender in that fight.
Anyways, all my picks are in for this weekend. That's how quickly I did them. So there you go. I'm obviously going to take Magomed Kurmiov in the fight, but Curtis Millender, you never know. I mean, he could surprise. He didn't look very good against Rory McDonald, but and I don't think he was at fight ready for this camp. So that's something a little bit interesting, but some crazy odds in this fight. That's like boxing odds. You don't see that too happen as well. So that's something very interesting. On top of that, anything else we want to talk about the PFL card? Maybe go back to the main menu seat here. Some good fights in here. You got Rory taking on Gleison Tebow. I like obviously Rory in the fight as well. By the way, Ian Heinisch working a lot with Rory McDonald for this camp. I just spoke to him yesterday. He's now at Stanford MMA as well. So
interesting fight here is Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Vinny Magalhaes.
Yeah,
I like that fight, man. I like these guys. Both
submission artists.
Yeah, submission artists. But I think Antonio's just a better MMA fighter.
He is, and I think he's better at 205 than 185 as well.
Exactly. But you never know with Vinny, man. He goes out there and sometimes he just pulls things out the hat. You know what I mean? Especially with submissions. But Carlos, man, he's a good submission guy. So we'll see, man. We'll see what happens to Vinny. But it seemed like Vinny's been look at his record in his last 5 fights. He hasn't won any.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's
That's
a
for sure.
huge underdog.
All right, good time to wrap up the show here. We got about a minute left. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Again, if you want to check out our breakdown of Dan Ige and the Korean Zombie, we did that a few weeks ago. You can find it here on the channel in depth, and we give our picks for that one as well. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. Make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I got that. I got all my picks in now, so we're all squared up there as well. John, what do you got coming up this week? I know you did a really good interview with Dan Hooker. I haven't had a chance to watch it. I'll do that after this. What else you got on tap this week?
Oh yeah, I got like you said, I just uploaded the interview with Dan Hooker, and I have an interview with Julian Arosa, on Fight Night Picks. Shout out to those boys over there. I got a few interviews. I got Diego Lima I think he fights this weekend, right? Diego Lima.
Yeah, he's fighting Matt Brown.
And a few other guys on the card, and and I got an article I'm gonna post in about 10 minutes on this Korean Superboy. I interviewed him too, and man, he's been through a lot of stuff in the last 4 years. He talks about all that. I write that stuff up, and and coming up, I think I got a few good names, man. I just can't say. I don't want to say, man. I don't want to.
Of course, I'm the same way. I got a big interview today as well, and I'm not saying anything until it all goes through. I'm working on a few others, but it's been tough, man. I'm telling you, man, some of these management companies, they're tough to get back to you. So you got to stay on them a little bit, but just the nature of the game, so to speak. So I'm sure
it has been a weird situation the last couple of weeks. I felt.
We'll see what happens. Big shout out to our producer, Michael, for myself, for John. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back a week here today, previewing an upcoming notable fight. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the fights this weekend.